Afghans go to the polls on August the 20th. This will be the country's second democratic presidential election since the Taliban was ousted in 2001. With us is Homeyra Mokhtarzada of the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, who will be going to Afghanistan to cover the election. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to
be here.
Well,
thank you very much for coming in and talking to us before you go to Afghanistan. But let me start by asking you to give us something of an overview of the election. How many candidates are vying for the presidency, and what are some of the main contenders offering Afghans?
There are 41 presidential candidates, two of whom are significantly women. The top three candidates are men. They are, of course, Karzai, Abdullah, who is a former foreign minister, and Ashraf Ghani, who's a former finance minister. In terms of what they're offering as the alternative, Ashraf Ghani has been very vocal about criticizing the government for corruption and mismanagement. So he is saying that he is going to turn that around. And Abdullah wants to decentralize the government. He doesn't believe in a centralized administration. He thinks that governors ought to be elected at the local level and be able to govern locally. And this kind of goes back to the way historically Afghanistan operated in the mid-1900s.
Do Afghans think that there's much to distinguish between their platforms? I mean, are they running mostly on issues of lawlessness, endemic corruption, trying to bring about stability, creating more jobs, and the general lack of insecurity that still plagues some parts of Afghanistan?
I think that, yes, their platforms are very similar because the problems that people are talking about are similar. Security is the biggest problem. Corruption is certainly endemic, and if you talk to ordinary Afghans, it's a big problem, probably one of the biggest problems after security to development in the country. And so all three candidates are addressing corruption. I don't know if they're going to actually be successful in terms of coming up with a plan to combat corruption and some of the other problems and challenges. But Afghanistan, unfortunately, is still the way politics works. It's still based on personality and still based on tribal affiliations.
The ethnic lines.
Ethnic lines.
So most people will vote along ethnic lines. So if you're a Pashtun, you're likely to vote for Karzai, and if you are from another ethnic or tribal group, you'll follow your various leaders who are standing from those different groups. Is that how it's going to go?
That's what we're expecting to see. And I think that, IFES, for example, does have a program trying to promote issue-based elections. So because we saw in the last two elections, in 2004 and 2005, Afghans voting along ethnic lines, along tribal lines, even along religious lines, the Sunni versus the Shia. We started a program in the last year and a half that basically does outreach to women, again, women-focused, and teaching women about not only their government and the role that their government ought to be playing, but really helping to change the paradigm. Women oftentimes will say, well, I vote based on who my husband tells me to vote for, or who the village elder or who the mullah says we ought to vote for. And what we've done is say, look, there are issues that are of real concern to you as a woman, be it health care, be it education, be it security. And you as a voter have a responsibility to know what the candidates are saying about these issues, to hold them responsible for what they're saying, and on election day to vote based on these issues that are important to you.
Well, what do Afghans think this election is going to change?
I think that is, it's a very difficult question to answer because one of the biggest challenges is voter apathy. Afghans, by and large, had a great deal of hope in 2004 and 2005, and they expected many things to change in the country. And unfortunately, we have seen security deteriorate.
So President Karzai let them down, and now he's running again. Are they going to stay? The ones that are some of the people that voted for him, are they going to stay at home? Because, I mean, some of the polls show that his popularity is decreasing, but yet he's still out in front compared to Ghani and to Abdullah. Is that a correct assessment?
I think it's fair to say that Afghans feel very let down by President Karzai's administration. and the international community as well. They go hand in hand. I think Afghans will still come out and vote. I don't think we'll see the same level of participation as we did in the 2004 election, and that could be because of apathy, it could be because of security concerns, people not coming out. There are areas that the United Nations has said are essentially no-go zones. They're red zones, and for security reasons, even the Election Commission has limited their presence.
How are the contenders funding their election campaigns?
They are getting funds from inside Afghanistan, from donations, from outside Afghanistan as well. Ashraf Ghani, who is contesting this election, has a campaign somewhat like President Obama's, where he has a website
and James Carville as well.
That's right. He is an advisor to Ashraf Ghani.
The Democratic strategist who helped Bill Clinton win the election. How is that? I mean, is this something that's being talked about much in the media in Afghanistan? How do people feel about it?
It's being talked about in political circles. And I think, from the Karzai camp, there's concern that this is a signal by the United States that they are supporting someone other than Karzai.
Even though James Carville is doing this as a private citizen, that still sort of hangs in the air, does it?
It's appearances. It's about appearances. Absolutely.
Could it hurt him? Could it hurt Ghani that he's got Carville helping him with his campaign?
I don't think so, because at the end of the day, Afghans are fairly independent-minded. Even if they're taking their advice from their tribal leaders. But they're fairly independent-minded. I mean, they understand that Karzai also has international advisors, and that there are international organizations providing aid and training to pretty much all the candidates. So I think it's just sort of an interesting little element that has been thrown into the election that you have to figure, like Carville.
Right. And other than the issues that we've already discussed, lawlessness and insecurity, how do people feel about the presence of NATO forces? Is this a contentious issue, or, I mean, what is the position of the candidates on this as well?
The position of the candidates is that they do want to see a decrease in international forces eventually. I think everyone, including ordinary Afghans, see the international presence as being necessary right now. I think the biggest flashpoint is civilian casualties, and we've heard a lot about that in the last few months. And I think that the international community, NATO, the United States, ISAF forces really need to make a concerted effort to minimize those civilian casualties if they want to continue to be well received in the country.
And how is this going? I mean, do you sort of anticipate it becoming a major issue among the electorate, or something that the candidates will play up, or not? Or is there no difference between the three or four?
Not so much for this
top?
election. I think, again, Afghans want their independence. They want to be free of foreign intervention. They don't want foreign troops on their soil, but they're also realists. They know that they have an insurgency in the south that is gaining ground, and that for the time being, you need an international presence because, simply put, the Afghan National Army and the National Police don't have the capacity at this point to fight the war on their own.
Homeyra, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about the elections, and come and talk to us afterwards as well. Once you've been out there, I'd like to get your impressions of how you felt it had turned out. Thank you.
Thank you.